Welcome, everybody, to this particular mastermind session that we've got hosted by Genius School called Nurturing Curiosity in Children and Youth, Proven Tips and Strategies. So we've got some interesting information to share with you today. Before I get underway, just give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm Karen, and I'm one of the Genius educators and leaders within the Genius School, and I lead a number of the youth programs, as well as involved with Angie Stead, who's the co-founder of Genius School, in training the educators. And June, I'm just going to get you to say a few words of welcome as well.
Welcome, everyone. As you can see, my name's June and I'm a Genius School educator, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some information with you today.
Great. Thanks, June. A little bit of background even more. June and I have, I guess, together collectively, we've got maybe 70 years, maybe even 80 years collective experience working in schools.
That's really nasty to say that. Yes.
Well, you know, everyone's going to get the benefit of our experience of all those years of working in education. What we're going to cover during this particular session is why curiosity is important for learning, some questions to consider when we're stimulating the curiosity and sense of wonderment in children and youth. And then June's going to be picking up on the 3 keys to curiosity and also some tips to help you to spark and maintain that curiosity in the young people with whom you interact. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens at Genius School and how you can be involved with us in understanding what it is to personalise the learning so that we can continue to have that curiosity piqued in young people so that they're really interested in learning what's going on. A little bit about Genius School. We offer child-centred personalised learning pathways, and it's all really designed around identifying what their natural talents and strengths and capabilities are, and then designing those learning pathways to suit them and to keep them motivated in learning. We are focused on creating self-aware lifelong learners. So a lot of the skills that we're teaching them, skills that will stay with them for a lifetime that they can use in their further studies if they go that path, or into their working careers, and also into their whole lifestyle that they choose to follow. A big focus is creating the leaders and the change makers of the future, and we do that by aligning a lot of our programs with the United Nations Sustainable Goals or with current worldwide issues that young people have an interest in. Together, as the educators and as the students, we're learning and discerning and also earning, because we have a young entrepreneur program as well. So it's great to have young people taking charge of their future. The meaning of the word genius is something that we're often asked about, because some people say, well, is what you do really only suitable for young people who have certain high-level aptitudes? And we go, no, genius is related to really the natural unique personality, or the spirit, if we go back to some of the terminology that the ancient Romans used, that their belief was that each individual was born with a unique spirit and personality, and that as we nurture it through life, then it continues to grow and develop. And it's also coming from the Latin term, where you can see it's about innate dispositions, talents, and inborn nature. So for us, we see that it's a blending of what the talent is, but also the sense of divine, the uniqueness of an individual. So that's our focus for when we're considering the term genius within the Genius School context. With our brain, regardless of our age, for that matter, but in particular for children and youth, that they're kind of born with the sense of being naturally curious. So they're inquisitive about lots of things, and they want to experiment, discover, adventure. All of that is all part of the process. So what we need to think about is, if we can tap into that curiosity, it helps the brain to prepare for learning. If we connect it in to getting a topic that intrigues a young person, then they're more motivated to engage and to learn. And hence why we focus on that personalised learning. If we can personalise the learning, that connects with the interest of the learner, then we start that element of getting them underway and continuing that sense of curiosity in their learning. Subsequent learning then is also more rewarding because we've already piqued their attention. We've already got them curious. We've already got them intrigued about what they're learning. And so then what happens, there are things that happen in the brain that continue to help us to create the memories and remember the learning. And so it's easier for us if we keep that curiosity alive, that we're constantly engaging young people in learning. Some of the things that we need to also bear in mind is based on the work of Rudolf Steiner. He talks about the different stages of development and he breaks it up into 7-year cycles. For us, we're just going to be considering here the children and the youth, young adults. So the first 7 years of life are extremely foundational. And this is an incredible physical development time, but it's also, if you have observed the way an infant or a young child behaves, they're always curious. They're always wanting to explore their immediate environment, and they're curious about what's there and around them. And if we keep the concept of play-based learning happening in this stage, then we've got that, I guess, the environment within which curiosity can be nurtured. Then when we go to the 7-14, this is where these young people live in a world of images and visual imagination, or even just imagination. They might have an imaginary friend that they have a conversation with. So we've got this stage there where they're experiencing the world around them to work out how they fit within the world. So they'll have all the diversity of places and spaces and experiences that go on here. And curiosity, again, has a big place to play, because this is where the imagination and sense of wonderment is really nurtured. Then when we go into the 14 to 21 years, this is where the thinking component comes in, where they begin to discover the world of ideas and opportunities that they have, and they're discovering their identity and their place, how they fit within the world. The big thing that they explore is the concept of who am I? Who do I connect with? Who is my tribe? And also they're looking for good role models. And so if we can have good role models around them, again, that's all part of the curiosity pathway. The other thing too is making sure that we're having open-end type questions which allow a young person to explore in the way that they want to. That's not subjective, it's actually more objective. So for the very young infant, the 0 to 7 age, they tend to want to explore the question of why at that stage. Then our 7 to 14 is more the what is happening, what ifs. And then our 14 to 21 is the who. And then we continue through the rest of the 7-year cycles exploring these questions. So it's always important to know that curiosity is not just relevant for children and young people, it's also relevant for us as well. So for us to be kept curious is to keep these questions in mind. Now I'm going to stop sharing and go over to June, because June's got some really important tips and strategies, and she dives a bit deeper into some of the things that I've shared with you.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks everyone from wherever you're coming in the world. For me, it is late afternoon and it's a lovely warm afternoon, so I'm quite happy about that. I'd like to also sort of tell you that I'm coming at this as a 3-for offer, if I can put it that way, all right? And my 3-for offer is that, yes, I'm a teacher, as many years as Karen has let you know in the beginning, but I'm also a parent and I'm also a grandmother. So when I'm talking about curiosity now, I'm looking at it from the point of view of that whole aspect of where children find their desire to learn. Because to me, as both a parent and as a teacher, it's that curiosity is fundamental to having a person who wants to learn and therefore continues and is successful in life. So that's essentially where I'm coming from. It's also, I suppose, something to think about as to whether we stifle curiosity. Now, I hope you excuse my very rudimentary graphic there, but I'd like to tell you a summarized version or a paraphrased version of a story. And the story goes, and many of you may have heard this story, and the story is that there's a little boy who was first time at school, was dying to go to school because he was really interested in everything he wanted to learn, got into the classroom, and his teacher said to him, "I'd like everyone to draw a flower." And so he thought, great, I'm going to get into that. I'm going to draw whatever I like and I'm going to color it in and I can do whatever I want. And the teacher said, "But stop, don't draw it yet until I've told you how to do this." And so he stopped, and because he was told by the teacher that there were 5 petals to a flower, there was a green stem, there was a yellow middle bit to it, and that was what a flower looked like. So he goes through school and goes through this year of his first year at school, being told, "Stop, no, don't do it yet because I haven't told you how we're going to do it, or I haven't told you what we're going to do." So he got used to the fact that he had to wait until he was told how to do something, wait until he was told what to do. Then he moved into the next year of schooling, and he had a teacher who wanted him to actually explore things. So when she or he had said to him, "I'd like you to draw a house," he waited. "How would you like me to do that?" And the teacher said to him, I don't mind how you do it, just do it however you like. Or you can draw a flower if you'd like." So he sat down, even though he was told you can do whatever you like, whatever color you like, and he ended up drawing a 5 red-petaled flower with a green stem. Now, I tell that story because I think it's really important that it's not just teachers for a start. I think as parents, we do that unconsciously, that we stifle the curiosity in our children totally unconsciously ourselves. And we stifle it because we want them to learn something, but in learning what we want them to go through, we actually don't think about how else they could get there. We look at it from the point of view of, well, one pathway. So I think if nothing else, after this time today, you go away and you think to yourself, do I stifle the curiosity in my children, in my students, whatever your context happens to be? How do I actually stop them from doing and being someone else? So I think, and I can admit to this as both a parent and as a teacher, I think that I have stifled curiosity in the past. I know now that I don't do that as a grandparent, all right? Whether that's age, whether that's something else, that's a different thing altogether. I'm not going down that one. However, I think it's really important. And so what I'm going to be looking at today and sharing with you today are some tips and, well, I wouldn't say tricks, but tips and strategies as to how we can sort of make sure we don't stifle that curiosity. Now, Karen has already taken you through that whole idea of why curiosity is so important, all right? It's important because neurologists have discovered, and there's been many studies, research done on this, they've discovered that when someone is curious, it opens neural pathways so that it makes people interested in what they're going to discover. And while there may not be anything that they've learnt at that point in time, it actually has set, if you like, the basis for something to go into the brain, go into the learning mechanism itself. So that's why it actually prepares the brain for learning. If someone is curious, it makes them think, oh, what else could it be? How else could I do this? So it makes them open. Now, a lot of the research that talks about curiosity also talks about this term humility, all right? And the term humility in this instance, curious humility is what they term it, right? The term humility is the idea that we actually need to make sure that we are open and want to explore things. And by doing that, we show humility in listening to others and in working things through, rather than thinking there's only one way of doing it. So that's the first thing that it does. It does prepare the brain for learning. But again, more importantly, I suppose that once the curiosity has been established, in the brain there are other neural pathways and another part of the brain, past the hippocampus, that actually allows the learning to flow even further, because at that point it becomes pleasurable. So if the student has, or the child has been successful and they've got pleasure from it, or they've got an excitement from it, then it actually makes it more rewarding for them. And that aspect of both opening and preparing the brain for learning and being that rewarding aspect actually makes things stick in your head much more than it does by just having any other type of a learning. So that curiosity is really critical. Whether we believe with Professor Einstein about whether curiosity has its own reason for existing, I do think that the important thing is that we never stop questioning everything. And so as both an educator and as a parent, I would be encouraging my children and my students to question things all the time. So how are we going to go about inspiring curiosity in your child? I have a few tips that I'm going to just go through quickly, and I will actually give, hopefully, time for you to actually ask any questions or suggest anything else as well, so that we can share our information. One of the things that I think, and this is I think as adults in today's world especially, we all have a lack of time, all right? And so that means that when someone is talking to us, or if we're trying to listen to someone else, sometimes we've got all these multiple things happening in our head, and we're not always 100% focused on who we're talking to. So one of the first ways of inspiring your own child or your own students to actually be curious is to actually have dedicated listening to whatever they're talking about. So that 100% focus. If you focus on what someone is saying to you, you have all the verbal and body cues that go with that. So looking them in the eye, all those sorts of things. If you do that, then it gives the person who's talking to you a sense of belief in themselves, a sense that what they're saying is valuable. And so they explore the ideas further. Same thing goes in reverse. If you're saying something, you would like the child, and if it's your own child, have 100% focus on you. So, you know, things like mobile phones in that sense may not be a good idea to have around, because it's distracting to that whole 100% listening activity. You'll notice that I have an image there on the screen in front of you, and it's it's a representation, if you like, of what used to be called an old curiosity box. Okay, and the old curiosity box was the idea that you'd have something, and I know, you know, in a classroom, I've had these in the past, you'd have something that had little displays in there that just perked questions in whoever was looking at it, made them think about it. That might be something you might like to think about as well. You wouldn't have an old curiosity box like that. A quill, mind you, that would be interesting. A child nowadays wouldn't know what a quill was about. So that could be interesting that you'd like to have that. But have different types of things around to make the child curious and ask questions. Because in my second point here, as I put it, questions are golden. Questions are the absolute root of where you get curiosity being engendered in children, because questions lead to exploration, and exploration leads to learning and to knowledge. So the questions are ones that you don't want children to stop questioning you. I'll actually come back to questions later on, but you really need to be thinking about how you can actually make that questioning as focused as possible, and listen to the questions of children and respond to them. Now, the third point I'd like to bring up is, as I've put it here, the power of awesomeness. I have a great affinity to when you see some natural occurrence. So, for instance, I used to teach at a school where I'd have to drive west to go home, and I'd see the mountains, I'd see the sunset as the sun was going down, and that would actually give me a sense of awe, all right? And that sense of awe would actually help me think, because it was a long drive home from school, it would help me think, what else could I be doing? How else? So it gave me my own sense of curiosity there. So when we talk about how you can inspire this in your child, think about what sense of awe can you establish for the children or for your students if it's in a classroom? What makes it different? And sometimes it's nature, sometimes it's an activity, sometimes it might be just someone doing something. It may be the children have seen an older child do a cartwheel, and they found that absolutely amazing. And that could be a sense of awe that you can follow through on and follow that up with how they would like to find out more about it. So these ideas of listening, questioning, giving children this notion that awe and that sense of awesomeness is critical, that is something that you can actually do really easily. You have no need for resources. It's a matter of actually thinking about it. And the next point that I'd like to bring up is it's okay not to know the answer. So if your child asks you a question and you don't know the answer, rather than, and I know as teachers in particular, and sometimes as a parent as well, I would make up something rather than say, I don't know the answer. The whole idea is that you actually talk to the child to say, I don't know the answer, but that would be a really interesting thing to discover. Why don't we? And then you can go off and start learning about it yourself. Take the child with you to whatever it is you have to find out about and actually explore that further. So not knowing the answer is critical. The other aspect of not knowing the answer and showing this by you modeling it to the child actually comes around in the end to developing a sense of resilience, a sense of clarity in your children, a sense of actually understanding that it's okay to be wrong sometimes because you can develop that. So this whole social and emotional well-being aspect is really critical by making sure that children know it's okay to be wrong as long as you know, and you can work out where you go to from there. So to me, this sense of curiosity is that first part of that whole process. So next few points to think about is to, and this is difficult in our very busy days now, in our busy lives now, you try to allow for the unexpected, all right? So try to allow for when you might see, for instance, 2 monkeys, but not 3. We know as adults that there's supposed to be 3 monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, all right? But in this instance, there's only 2. What is it? That's an unexpected aspect to what we're looking at the moment. So if that's unexpected, can you actually go with that and talk to the child, talk to your students about that? It's also allowing for the unexpected in the sense that oftentimes, and I know children can ask questions at the most irritating times because you're cooking dinner or you're trying to do something else, or they'll be questioning you all the time as you're driving, whatever it happens to be. While that's unexpected, if it's at all possible, you should always allow for that conversation, that discussion to happen. So not every time can we do that. There are sometimes we have to tell students now or children, now is not the right time, we'll come back to it. But when it's possible to allow for the unexpected, that's good. It's that serendipitous moment that we have to give children access to so that they can engender their own curiosity as well. one thing that I think that I'm quite sad about in so many ways nowadays is that people don't read enough. All right. So, and which is why I sort of went to the effort of putting different colours on it, you know, minor detail there. But learning to read is one thing, but reading for enjoyment and reading for information is a totally different thing that we need to put time into. So not only reading to your child, even if your child is 12, 13, 14, and they still don't mind you reading to them, all right? Or having your child have a time at home where it is only reading time. Getting that child to be a reader is even more so, that's where curiosity happens. If you're a reader yourself, you'll know that when you read, it takes you into ways to explore concepts, ideas, adventures that are totally safe because you're reading, but it gives you ways to work through things to say, I wonder if the character had have been doing A, B, and C, whether that would have made a difference. So again, it engenders curiosity because your brain is totally free when you're reading to actually go with wherever it wants to go. So reading is critical, you know, part of this. Another aspect too, you know, and I think I've probably covered this already actually, is this is all about sharing your own enthusiasm. How do you, you know, something that you really love and something that you're passionate about, you should be sharing that with your children, sharing that with your students. So for me, for instance, I love astronomy. I love science. So to me, sharing that was critical for when I was teaching or when I was having my children, you know, when my children were growing up. Sharing that whole notion of travel, for instance. You know, my children would hate it when I'd say to them, when something would come up on the TV, I've been there. And I'd talk to them about where it was, you know, what I'd read or what I'd seen or what the travel was about. So sharing that enthusiasm helps the enthusiasm being engendered within the child itself. And then lastly here, when you having all these notions, all these tips, all these strategies to make your child curious or to inspire that curiosity, somewhere in your busy day as well, you need to find time to share, to actually think about what you've learnt, where you've gone, what you've done. So that's both for you and for your child or your student. So where is that reflective moment? Now, I did say I'd come back to this idea of questioning, because I think no matter what I was talking about with these ideas or these dot points of inspiration, all of them involved questioning one way or another. Now, for any teachers online this afternoon, you'll know that the 5 W's and H have been a tool that we've used as teachers for a long time. All right, so basically it's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And we've used that from the point of view of going from closed questions, and a closed question is one where it has a definite answer, through to open questions. So it could have multiple interpretations of it. Now, when it comes to curiosity, I would like you to focus on that what if, the why, and the how. So it's not when your child comes home from school, or when, you know, my grandchildren would come home and I'd say, what did you do at school today? And they'd say to me, nothing. So I wouldn't ask that question because it wouldn't give that type of response. But if you ask a question about, oh, how did it go today when you're in the playground talking to whomever it happened to be? So think about the questions of what if, why, and how, because all three of those question stems, as we think of them, are open questions. In other words, they're not asking the child to just give you the right answer, because curiosity is going to be closed down if we say there's a right and wrong all the time. So curiosity is going to be opened up if we give them the ability to actually not only explore what happened, but to actually start projecting further in that what happened. So to take some type of imagery from their head and make it real. So those powers of questions, if nothing else, take away the what if, the why, and the how, and make sure that it's not asking the child just for, you know, how did you go today in your test? That's not a good how question, because the answer is going to be yes or no. So the how question there would be, how could we look at keeping bees in our backyard, for instance? I don't know that I want to do that, but anyway. So now there are many strategies. I'm going to share these 5 with you because these are ones that I've actually done myself. All right, so they have a research basis to them, but they're also practical from that point of view. So one of the strategies that I've done quite frequently is this whole idea of a family discussion. You can use this as a reflective time. You can use this as just a sharing time to get the children to have conversations. It might be around the dinner table at night time. It may be out in the backyard, wherever you happen to be. But this whole idea of having a family discussion about something that's happened in the life of one of the people in your family, or if you're in a classroom, having a discussion, a roundtable discussion about something that's happened at school, or something, if you're an older, you know, you've got youth, teenagers in your class, something that's happened in the current world at this point in time. So those sorts of discussions open it up because there's no right or wrong, and allows everyone to actually work through ideas. And the more ideas, and your role as the parent or as the teacher is to actually ask those what if, how, why questions to actually keep the discussion going. Okay. Next, I call these adventures and explorations. And I can tell you that my grandchildren really hate it when I say we're going on an adventure, because they know an adventure is something where she doesn't really know where she's going, but we're going to have to go along with her anyway. All right. So they know that my idea of an adventure is, let's do something we haven't done before because we don't know where we're going. Because to me, that's what will help them develop curiosity. It also helps them actually become more resilient to fear, more resilient to not knowing. So these whole idea of adventures and explorations are ones that I would encourage you to consider when it comes to your students in the classroom. The adventure might be, let's go out to the playground and look at, you know, the bird, the kookaburra that's come down. Sorry if you're not Australian, I just thought of that. The kookaburra that's come down and what the kookaburra is doing. Next would be this wonder out loud. This is part of what, as teachers, we know is called metacognitive thinking, all right? So what we do is we start thinking about our thinking and we talk about it. So when we want children to be curious, we have to actually wonder, and wonder it out loud, not just wonder it in our heads, all right? Wonder it in our heads is not good enough. But if we actually question to say, right, I wonder why that student has a headband on, or I wonder why I didn't, you know, I haven't done A, B, and C for quite a while. So wonder out loud, have a conversation about what the answer to the wondering, and get the children to be part of that wondering as well. You could ask them about, what do you wonder about? Okay. Now, I've already talked about this whole idea of admit you don't know the answer and then find out with your child or your teen. That is really critical. If children don't mind you not knowing the answer, because number one, you can actually work with them to find it out, and they enjoy that. Even if they're teenagers, they still enjoy it, right? But it also, very more so, actually gives them this whole idea of things are out there that we don't know about, and we're always going to find out something. We're not going to actually always have the right answer, and it's okay to fail. Because one of the things of our children nowadays, and I'll go back to this social emotional well-being aspect, one of the things for children nowadays is that they often seem to think that if they don't have it right, then it's wrong. And that's not right. That's a bit Irish, isn't it? But it is a matter of, if it's something that we don't know about, that's okay. We can find out about it. And if that turns out to not be quite right, we can find out about it again. So if you go on that location and that finding out about journey with your children, that would be great. And I'm going to come back to my last point, and this is something that people who are educators in a preschool environment know this without even talking about it. And that is, this whole idea of sustained play is critical for curiosity. So in preschools, their whole curriculum is about a play-based curriculum, usually speaking, all right? When they come to school, we don't have play-based curriculums, or they are available in certain schools, but on the whole, and I can only say this in Australia, obviously, but on the whole, our curriculum is not a play-based curriculum. Somehow we need to give children this idea that it's okay to play. And I'm not talking about being on a phone playing a game, although that could be the case, but I'm talking about giving them an ability to actually physically play, do something that's different, to actually help them wonder about what might it be. They might go out to the garden to look for or play a game of cricket. And in the process of playing a game of cricket, they find a blue-tongued lizard in the garden, all right? That whole idea of that, having that sustained time for play, allows them to explore what's around them. So again, it could be digital, it doesn't have to be just physical, but it's really important to have the sustained time for play and not have our children with activities all the time lined up after school. Okay, something that gives them the time to actually just explore who they are and learn about themselves and learn about the world is critical in that instance. So I'd like to sort of finish off, I don't know where I'm up to, Karen, time-wise, but I'd like to finish off with this whole idea that curiosity is something that we need to peel the layers back from, all right? We need to peel it back and to keep picking at it so that students and children will actually keep exploring what curiosity is. Because questions demonstrate a curious mind. Don't dismiss questions out of sight. Make time for students to have exploration of their questions. Make time that you've got unstructured time to experiment for children. All of that is something that we know of as parents and as teachers. Really, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's something that we actually lose sight of. So if we want our students to be curious, and as I started out by saying, curiosity is the basis for learning, then we need to make sure that we engender this whole idea of curiosity, both in our children and our students, but also in ourselves. So I'm going to stop there, Karen. And
great, thanks, June. Yeah, some nice little tips and strategies and different things, and some things, I guess, in many respects are a little bit like common sense with what we actually do. So if people got some questions, now's time that you can, we've got some time before we need to kind of come to a conclusion here. Anything that you might have, any questions you might want to put in chat, we can answer those. But it's really a case of taking some of the ideas that June has shared and knowing that they're relevant regardless of the age that you're dealing with, whether you're a parent or whether you're an educator, you're a teacher, or whether you might be a youth coach, or whatever way that you are connected with young people. Curiosity is always there. And that last point about play, we need to be looking at how we have play throughout all of our different stages. Particularly while we're in the formal education, even for ourselves, we need to not be afraid to have some playtime. Just that the whole thing, it sort of relaxes our mind, it opens our mind, and we're open to exploring all sorts of things. Okay, so we got Marcus from Hong Kong. Can I ask how to nurture our kids' focus?
I think we need to actually, it's like asking how you can keep someone on task for more than 10 seconds, isn't it? It's this attention aspect to it, Marcus. And I think that what we need to remember is that while we know that children's concentration spans seem to be relatively short, all right, and even when they're older, they seem to still have a relatively short concentration span. When they are curious, when they are focused on something, they are laser-like in their focus, absolutely laser-like. You only need to watch how teenagers play digital games to know that. They can sit in front of it for ages. So it comes to, if we want to nurture focus for students, we have to actually get them curious about whatever it is we want them to focus on. So that curiosity factor is, how do we help them actually get an emotional attachment to whatever is the information that they need to focus on? Where's that emotional attachment? And it might be, for instance, that it's a history lesson or a history that you want children to find out about. You need to actually find where that connection is for the child. Is the connection back where you can say to them, oh, your grandparents were doing A, B, and C? Or is it about the fact that your little friend has been doing this all along? And did you know that? So you can actually get them curious and focused, and they will actually, once you've got the focus in, you're fine.
Yeah, I think too, Marcus, keeping in mind those open-ended questions. Because if the child can even create some of their own questions, it then keeps them curious about what the response might be. And then you, if you're a parent, is looking at how you can just continue to guide those questions as well. As June's indicated, you can open up some questions for them. Now, while we're thinking about this, I'll just come back to share screen here and share with people something that we do within the Genius School is that we have a couple of little quizzes that we give the kids, particularly if they're of an age around about 9 or 10 and above, where they're able to make some independent decisions and to address, some short questions. So the question, we've got a multiple choices, so there's no right and wrong answer, but it's getting them to answer them how they're showing up at a particular time. And what we find is that every child, as we've said, is a genius, and every child has their own natural blend of this mix. For us, we have 4 energies that we talk about for a child, or 4 different ways that they look at the world. There's the dynamo, and then there's the blaze, and the tempo, and the steel. And these are all closely aligned to each other because they bring in all of the different modalities for the way that we learn. And every child will have a blend of these, but what they'll have is kind of a predominance or a natural leaning towards one way that they want to take in and then be added to by the other modalities. So with our dynamo, if we're looking at the curious mind there, we're looking at the person who's got lots of ideas. So what happens is that they'll be like the daydreamer in the classroom or the daydreamer in your household, and they'll just be having all these great ideas and imaginations and looking at the world from all different angles and all different opportunities, because they're that ideas smart type of person. And as they go into that older teenage stage and young adult stage, that's when their intuitive thinking capacity comes in, where they know it's just right to do something because they've taken in a lot of information and then they've made this conscious decision that this is the intuition that they're going to follow. With our blaze, what you'll find is they're the chatterer in the household or the chatterer in the classroom. They're constantly wanting to talk about things. And as June was saying before about explorations and adventures, they're wanting to chat all about this, and everything that they're experiencing, they'll want to chat about. And that's where we see for them, they're probably more kind of the right brain thinking, where they're emergent thinkers. They come up and they're great at brainstorming. And so this is where we're focusing. If we can identify the way our child is naturally wired, we can help them to focus. So if we think about the tempo, they're more down to earth and they're more grounded. They're more fair in the way that they interact with other children around them. They're always looking out for others, so they're aware of everything around them, and they're very attuned to their senses. So they'll be more of an experiential thinker. They'll be wanting to kind of have a sense of how they feel about things, and really conscious of others around them, in taking care of others and making sure that the other people are being nurtured as well. So these kids are more kinesthetic, where they want to get the experience and the hands-on and be engaged in those activities, and doing experiments and all those sorts of things. And then our steel energy is more on the introverted side, where they like to be in their own space. They'll have a group of close friends that they want to hang out with, but they'll be in their own space, and that's where their attention is on the focus and on the logical and reasoning, all of those kind of things, in the way that they think, the how to do something, the processes. And they'll be a tinkerer, so they'll be good at things like pulling something apart and putting it together to make it work better, or maybe even creating something a little bit different if they're more in the creative zone. So these are all different ways that we can, once we know what their leaning and their tendency and their natural capacity is, that also helps us to keep them focused, but also helps us to facilitate their learning by exposing them to different opportunities where they can explore their curiosity. They can explore the different ways that they want to learn. So what I'm going to do, just while I've got this in mind, I'm just going to put a couple of links for these, because you can get access to these little quizzes. I'll just put them into chat. So the first one I've put there, this is the teen quiz. And as I said, this is for kids who are around about 9, 10 and upwards. But then if you've got a household where they're younger, then it's a case of, probably the best thing I can do is I can give you what we call the Genius test for the adults, where you can do that. And then when you become conscious of all the different attributes that are aligned to each of the different energies, you can then kind of go, yeah, my child, a younger child, like a toddler maybe, they've got this sort of temperament, how they behave, whether they're the chatterer, or whether they're the ideas smart, constantly daydreaming, and maybe have an imaginary friend or whatever. And then, of course, your tempo are the ones who are grounded, making sure that everything's fair play, listening to everybody, having a chance for everybody to have a say. And then, of course, your steel energy is, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that. We're going to follow this process. And this is the way we want things to be controlled in what's happening. So they're the things to keep in mind as you go through. So for us, we focus on sort of 3 things when we're dealing with our kids in the Genius School. Is the first, sense of self-awareness, and that is knowing how you turn up, knowing how you learn at your best, knowing how you can communicate, and potentially, because we're looking at nurturing the young leaders, how you would naturally be a leader, the way that you would perform in certain environments. And then we look at getting them to master different skills and capabilities as they go through the different programs. And then, of course, allowing them that self-expression opportunity, where they can possibly not be confined to format, not like that young boy that June was talking about, where, okay, hold on, you can't do anything because this is what we're going to do. You're going to have 4 petals, the yellow bit and the green stem and what have you. We're more focused on allowing young people to have some sense of self-expression. And often what we find is, with the programs we run, is that no child will have the same topic. We take them through the same process of learning, and we expose them to the same methodologies of how they learn. But when they come to their own self-expression, that's where they're given the chance, as June was saying before, that emotional investment, which keeps them engaged, keeps their attention, keeps them focused, and keeps them curious and interested in their learning. Because we have lots of opportunities of how people can be involved. If you're a parent, you can have your kids involved in some of our programs. If you're a parent and you want to know more, or you're a coach or even a teacher, then we've got different programs that we have where you can be involved in being educated in the different methodologies and approaches and getting access to a bigger toolkit than just the free material to be able to help kids to understand themselves and how they show up as their best. So there's great opportunities. And if you're a teacher, there's opportunities to kind of have a monetary side hustle on the side. So what we have is our entry level of what we call our Genius School Youth Consultant, or a Genius Guide. So you're there as this guide on the side because you're learning to understand the way that your child or the way that your students function in different learning environments. And as part of that, we've got our different programs, our online programs. So it means that you don't have to actually turn up. You can do these at your own pace and go through them and connect in with our community. But these two particular programs, the Flow Consultant program helps you to understand the different profiles. So we've got the energies, as you can see, this image in the bottom. There's our Dynamo, which is our Ideas Smart, our Blaze, our People Smart, Tempo Sensor Smart, Steel Detail Smart. But then we can dive deeper by using our multiple choice online assessment tool, where we can really start to find out in more detail what the capabilities of a young person is. Just to give you an idea of the report that's generated, you can see that, June. Just let me know that. Yep, okay. So this is the report. This is the Teen Dynamics, which is the profiling report. So in this case here, this young person has taken the report, completed the multiple choice questions, and they come up as a Lord. Now, as you can see, they have the different percentages which indicate what their capacity is across the ideas, the people, the senses, and the detail. And for this young person, they're very much what we call a Lord profile, and they're on the Steel energy side. So for them, when we know this, we know that they're a young person who wants to have a sense of clarity around and clearness around what is it that I'm being asked to do here. And they're focusing on the how do I do it, and making sure that they're feeling comfortable and in control. And their curiosity is all about how they might be able to tinker with something to make it work better. So they might be interested in coding, for example, or even in the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, maths. They may have great capacity for numbers or for all the details around science and experiments and what that's all involved. So this is where, if we understand them by understanding their profile, for June and I as educators, we can then look at how we set up the learning to help to engage the young person. And as the report goes on, it gives them more detail, gives them an idea of what their natural strengths are, and then what they're not so good at, how they can be successful, where they might make mistakes, because what they're doing is they're focusing on their weaknesses, not their strengths. And so when they do that, then things can get a little bit wobbly for them. And it gives them ideas of best activities that they can do, best roles. And all along the way, it goes into more details, gives them an idea of different people around the world who are also Lords, so they can go and do a search, find out a little bit more about them, might want to read up about them a bit more. And then the report continues. So if you see up the top there, all in all, there's 20 pages. So they can go through and look at all of these different aspects to understand, what it is to be able to learn. So we give them an idea of all the different learning activities that are useful for them as well. So that's all part and parcel of what you get here. Is these programs help you to understand those profile details, but also this Youth Consultant Genius Guide helps you to understand how you would interact with a young person as you help them to unpack that report so they can understand it a lot better. So the next part is that we give you what we call tokens. Now, these tokens you can give away, or this is where I'm saying you can have a bit of a side hustle. You can sell them and you can make some money by selling them. So the Teen Dynamics profiles create that teen report, and the Talent Dynamics profile tokens, they create the Talent Dynamics report, which is suitable for the parent or the adult who is having the greatest impact on a young person's life. And also because you've got that information, they get their report emailed to them after they complete the quiz, and then you get it sent to you as well because you own that particular token. And that way then you can connect with them and help them to understand themselves. But also too, particularly if you're an educator and you had a classroom of students all complete their profiles, then it would help you as an educator, but also the students as well, to understand how they work, but how they interact with each other. So it's powerful material when you can get your hands on it. And then because we also offer the opportunity that you can be part of our EdTech platform, and I'm just going to also put in here, if you're not already part of our Genius School campus, I'll just put that into the chat. I can find the chat. Where did it disappear to? Let me bring, oh, here it is. So this is our Genius School campus, and we've got quite a few people who are in the campus, and this is where we share a lot of ideas and strategies to continue the learning that we're engaged in as educators, but also supporting parents and also the young people who are in the space as well. But what you can do is when you go in and you have a look at that particular campus circle and you go along and you look at the different programs, you can see that you could have yours there as well if you do have something. So you might be an educator and you've already got a program that you have, then you can host it on the EdTech Genius U platform and people can participate in your program. The other thing too, we've got affiliate here. So any program that's there, there's always a little link that you can click on and you can share it with others, which means you get a percentage of the sales. So again, this is this side hustle that's running in the background. So all of that happens with all of this training, and you can go through it at your own pace. There's no deadline, but of course it's a case of if you're really invested in making a difference, then you'll go through it at a reasonable pace. And then so you can do things like generate your own revenue with the profiling and debriefing, doing your own sales and programs with events and products and programs, but also supporting others in there who are educators and making some revenue from the affiliate sales. And you also get the chance to collaborate with other educators in the space. We've got quite a community. You'll go in there and you'll find June and myself as members of that community, and we're happy for you to connect with us because there's also the chance that in that community you can also message us and let us know if you've got any further questions. So this is all, we've got a special enrollment of $1,200 if you're interested in participating in that. And you've got like 12 months and you're connected with us during that 12-month period to go through the program. And so if you're wanting to do that, or even if you're not wanting to do that, but you're wanting to find out more about some of our youth programs that you've got, then what you can do is if you scan that code, you'll be having a chat with me and you'll be able to find out some times that are going to be available that you can connect with me and we can have a chat about all the different aspects that you might want to explore, even if it's wanting to explore a little bit more about what we've covered in this particular broadcast, but also too if you want to talk about things in regard to learning about being an educator within our community or helping to understand your child more, but also some of the programs that we run for our young people as well. So there's all different ways that you can be involved. And it's really up to you as to how involved you want to become, because we do run these particular masterclasses and each month we have a different focus. But if you're involved in the community, you get to connect with other educators and other parents as well who are also interested in igniting the genius in every child. And that's our focus that we have, is that we are keen to get young people to understand themselves and how to show up as their best self and to develop their confidence and their resilience, but also to develop the future ready skills that they need. So what we'll do is we've got about a minute to go, which means if there are any questions, you could key those in. I see Stephanie said the profile report is a great resource. Absolutely, Stephanie. Have used that a number of times. And as an educator, I've used the talent dynamics with teachers and helped them to look at how they can interact as teams within their school by understanding their own natural capacity that they have as well. So the the team dynamics and the talent dynamics are certainly valuable resources for anyone who's wanting to dive deep into understanding how they just turn up as their best self or their authentic self. So, June, any final words from you, and then we might close off if there are no questions.
I think my only last message, I suppose, would be to make sure that in any of our interactions we're open, approachable, and that we show that we don't know everything. All right, and if we have those qualities, then curiosity will naturally flow from there. And that's the sort of thing that I would say you should engender in your students and your children as well.
Absolutely. We're all lifelong learners right beside each other. So keep that in mind. Well, thank you, everybody who's been with us for this broadcast, and to those who ultimately will listen to the recording. I will have a follow-up email going out, and I'll include those links to those little quizzes, so you'll have those if you didn't manage to capture them. But if you want to, I'm pretty sure if you look at the chat, there's like 3 little dots that sit down the bottom of the chat there, and if you click on that, it should say you can save. Let me just have a look. Yeah, if you click on the 3 little dots at the end of the meeting chat, it says save chat, so you can save the chat and then you'll have that information. So thanks, folks, and hope we get to see you on one of our other webinars in a month's time.
Thanks, Karen.